we will. Yeah, we'll get going again if everyone's ready.
Too much coffee.
It's really buzzing. You could have done some more caffeine.
So yeah, as I said, we've got 4 of our members up here: Carol, Warren, Rich, and Joseph. But rather than me introduce them, what would be the best thing is I'll just let them one by one just to say who they are, maybe in terms of when they were diagnosed and just I suppose where you're up to, so maybe where you live or what's happening with your life at the minute. Just a minute or two, whatever you'd like to say.
I'm Josie. I was diagnosed 7 years ago when I was 19. I live in St Ives, which is only about 20 minutes away. And yeah, I've got 2 children, aged 7 and 3, 4. She's not 4. Just.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Warren. I was diagnosed 8 years ago when I was 19. And yeah, I live in Ely, just about 10-15 miles north of Cambridge. I work for the local charity for blind and visually impaired people as sort of promotions fundraiser sort of person. And yeah, I'm sure you can find out more. I'll pass you on to the next person.
Hello, I'm Richard Wheeler. I'm 30 at the moment. Lost myself about 6 years ago with LHON. I live in Winchester, about an hour south of London, and currently I'm volunteering in the council. There's a lot more that I could say, but I won't yet, I guess.
Hello, I'm Carol, and to start with, I'm not all that tall. It's just that this chair won't go down the front.
Maybe we should put ourselves up.
For those of you who are in a position to notice, I've got rather a lot of grey hair. I was diagnosed 2 years ago, so you can do your maths, at the age of 69.
Thank you very much. And what would be nice next just to hear in terms of a general overview, and depending on how much detail you want to go into, but what would you say was the impact on your life and how you've adjusted? That's a really big open question, but just take it as you like. If you go, Rich.
Okay, so I guess I lost my sight when I was 24, and then I was working in hospitality at the time in a restaurant. So immediately, it's not really the sort of.
Sorry, I was just agreeing that it would not be that sort of.
Yeah. But it's not really the sort of environment where I can just go straight from losing my eyesight, learn how to use the computer again, and then straight back into work, because obviously hospitality is not exactly the sort of area where you can do that. It's a very visual sort of thing. So I went to the Loughborough RNIB college and relearned how to use the computer, different skills. I learned how to use the cane. I've learned level 1 and level 2 Braille, although I don't really use it at all because I'm not very efficient at it. And then I've been back to university to complete my degree, redid my 3rd year on that in business management. And then since then I've kind of been looking to try and get back into work, but it's partly a confidence sort of thing. So on the one hand, I think that kind of LHON is a bit sink or swim, and you need your confidence to kind of be more independent. But on the other hand, it's the confidence to get back into work and things. So since then, I've recently started a volunteer position within the council, but I've just done little bits of volunteer stuff since, and I'm quite keen on getting back into paid work, but it's quite a scary prospect as well. I've got quite a lot into sport and things like that, like goalball and running and things, which I wasn't too much into before, but I think it does help with the mental health sort of aspect as well through the endorphins and things like that. So I mean, I've got quite sporty. I like trying new things. So I've done yoga, tai chi. I've tried a few other sports and things. As I said, I do cross-country running at the moment and done a little bit of boxing and stuff, which I thought was fun. And yeah, just quite keen on trying everything out. So I don't know, try new things and get into stuff, and that's kind of one of the main impacts, I guess. Who wants to?
Go to it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'll go. So, yeah, initially the impact for me, well, as we didn't know, it was in my family. It was incredibly hard to take that initially being told I could go blind. They didn't know how much sight I could lose. I didn't know how much I could lose. It was still deteriorating at the time, and I was in hospital. And I think initially that was hard to take in. But I was about an inpatient for about 2 weeks immediately after my A-level exams. And yeah, I guess having that time in hospital gave me the chance to sort of think about things a bit more clearly and realise that you can still have an enjoyable life without being able to see everything clearly. So I think it was quite important to come to that realisation. In a weird way, with my sight loss happening when it did, as I look back upon it now, on hindsight, if I could choose a time for it to happen, I couldn't have chose a better time for it to happen for me. Because I had just enough sight to finish writing my last A-level exam. I had my face pressed against the table, it was A3 paper, wrote about 14 pages, so I can't guarantee it was all in the lines, but I still passed all the A-levels with decent grades, and once I'd done that, I had no full-time education, I had no full-time job, no kids of my own. I had very few responsibilities, so it was almost like a gap year where I could learn how to be blind. Like most people go travelling, I did that. And yeah, I learned to touch type. From the hospital, I was pointed in the direction of the local charity for the blind, where I learned to touch type, much like Chad does, sort of learned to use screen reading software, learned to use the cane. I learned grade 1 Braille, which I mainly used to play cards and things. Grade 2 Braille, I started learning that, but then I went to university, and that's where I sort of honed a lot of those skills, the sort of deadline meeting, the sort of socialising with new people without being able to see their faces, all that totally new stuff. I sort of tried to hone those skills at university, and that was a fantastic experience. Managed to get everything out of it that I really wanted to. So yeah, I think it was quite important for me to have that support in the very first instance, that sort of practical support. So very fortunately, I was able to get. I think it's a very personal thing for everyone, like sight loss, and I think for me, I was able to move on relatively quickly from the emotional side of things. So for me, it was the practical side of things that was really important to get in place at that time, because I think if they weren't in place quick enough, then I would have probably got bored and restless, and that would have probably wound me up quite a bit, I'd imagine. So yeah, it was really important for me to sort out those practical things in the first instance. So yeah, Caroline, Josie, who wants to go next?
I'll give it to Josie.
Josie? Yeah, there you go.
Well, I had a 4-month-old baby, so that was pretty hard. And I think I found it really hard to just accept it. I remember Campsite actually ringing me for an emotional support group, and I remember just not ready at all. I was completely in denial, like there's nothing wrong with me. And I actually got a call about 6 months later, and I just burst into tears on the phone and was like, yes, please. And I actually there was only a small group, it was about 4 or 5 of us, and I met someone who was terminally ill, and he was so blasé about it, and then it just does put things in perspective, and it makes you realise it's not the end of the world, it's not the worst thing that can happen to you. And I was on maternity leave at the time as well, so I haven't been able to get back into work since, and I'm hoping to do some volunteering in a school because I've never been ready since. I did go for an interview once where I'd done work experience before, and they made me look out the window and they said, "Oh, can you read the number plates on those cars?" And I said, "Can't really see the cars out there." And they were just like, "Oh, we're not sure you'll be able to work with children," so it did put me off a little bit. But yeah, I think I'm definitely ready now to get into work. I think volunteering is definitely the easiest way, and hopefully it will lead into something else. So, okay.
I suppose I've gone through a series of peaks and troughs, and I'm never quite sure which one is on at the time. Having retired, 5 years ago, I've gone through all the traumas of retirement. I'm on the scrap heap, what do I do now kind of thing. And in 2013, I just about got myself organised with things to do, including doing, I don't know why I needed yet another degree, but I thought I might, and doing a distance learning degree in family and local history, which was at least keeping me out of mischief. And of course I had to abandon that. Fortunately I'd reached a stage at which I could exit from that. The only kind of rehab which I had was going along to somebody to learn to use JAWS, which I'm still not very good at, but I've got somewhere with it. I've had quite a number of academic things which have sort of kept me going, but the trouble is they tend to be busy for a month or two at a time and then stop, so I go back into a trough. But if you want the story of my total insanity, a few weeks ago I decided to go back and try and do a bit more of the degree which I've been doing. So I'm currently wrestling with JAWS, wrestling with a virtual learning environment which I can't quite navigate to continue another module of this qualification which I was doing. Whether I even survive to the end of this module, I might let you know in due course.
And I'll put the question out to the floor in a second, but one other thing I'd like to ask you all, happy to answer it, would be a sort of twofold question. One would be, what's the one day-to-day thing that causes you the most frustration or week to week? Just little things that happen in your life, because I think we'd all experience that, and it's always interesting to hear different people's views on that. And then also, in terms of how you've adjusted emotionally, practically, what's the main thing that you've done? It could be a piece of technology or software, it could just be Richard was talking about trying new things, a mindset or support from people, whatever it is. But yeah, just those two things to maybe put to you. One about the frustration that's really still annoys you each time, and one about a way you've adjusted.
Cool. Yeah, I'll go again first then.
You got the microphone.
I keep getting handed it.
I can't think of anything.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess one of the big frustrations is kind of communication. And firstly, it's a very difficult thing for people who are affected, like myself and others, to kind of communicate what is frustrating and what isn't. There's things that people could do to help out, which you know, I might not want to mention because you're very gracious for the help that you do get and things like that. But then there's other things as well where it's kind of my girlfriend's brilliant, but there's things where I'll ask her, like, what's this? And she'll say, it's a book. I'm like, I know it's a book, but what book is it? Like, what's and you know, just little things where it's kind of, and then with directions and things. And I guess as well, one of the other things that's a bit frustrating with LHON is the whole, you know, I'll use a long cane and things, but people still don't realise that you're blind and things. So if you get the bus, then they'll tell you to put your card there or whatever, and you kind of think, where is there? What are you talking about? And they don't realise because they just look at the eyes and not the stick, and you know, it's kind of like a double-edged sword in that respect. I think, what was the second point? That was about
Just about, yeah, sort of coping or adjustments or technology or whatever.
Yeah, so I think there's one of the ways that I cope with it as well is obviously I've learned how to use JAWS and things, and it's constantly a learning sort of cycle and stuff. I mean, one of the things with that is that you've got to try a lot harder than other people and things like that. So there's when I redid my third year at uni, I got tons of help from my dad and from other places like that. But at the same time, it's kind of, it was the third year, so you do need to knuckle down a lot more. But obviously, it's probably a lot harder than everyone else around you who's sighted, and you do need that extra help and support and things. There's, in terms of the sport and stuff that I do, as I say, it kind of helps out with the endorphins and things. But I think as well, one of the reasons why I do it is because then I can put it on my CV, and you do get people who turn around and think, well, how do you do this? And, you know, there's lots of things that blind people can still do, but people don't realise that and understand that. And I kind of feel putting these things on my CV would kind of help dispel people's myths and prejudgments and stuff. And then, you know, there's the support groups and things on Facebook and online and things. It's kind of, I got into goalball as well, which is the blind sport. There's Warren plays it as well. By the way, when he said Chud, that's me.
Yeah, sorry if that's confusing. That's your global name.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's, so I found kind of hanging around with other people with sight loss and vision impairment, you can talk about the things that piss you off and annoy you and upset you in a setting where people will understand it, and I found that a great shoulder to lean on. There's the LHON to LHON Facebook group and things, which I find quite useful because sometimes you don't want to talk to friends and family about it, you want to talk to people who understand and know and won't judge, and you kind of say whatever you like and upsetting things, just whatever, and you know, open up a bit more potentially.
Just to add, the LHON to LHON Facebook group is only open to people affected with visual impairment.
And yeah, and then there's, you know, I've gone through like counselling and things. I have had anxiety and depression and things through LHON as well. And I think that things like counselling and things like that are very important to deal with as well. There are the practical sort of issues that people struggle with on a day-to-day basis, but obviously there's the emotional side of it as well, and they can both cross over quite a bit as well. So it's kind of just keeping on top of it all and working as a community, I think, can help out in that respect too. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I think.
Cool.
Okay, most frustrating thing, with all due respect to my husband, who is very, very helpful and very kind and very loving and all those things, going to a supermarket with him is the most frustrating thing. Because I know what I want, I can't find it. He doesn't understand the things that I'm looking for. What was the other question?
Just about coping or adjustment, anything that you've done that's helped.
Coping, I suppose two things, JAWS and Easy Read and those kind of things inevitably mean that I can get on with things and just do them, even though I sometimes have to be rescued from JAWS. And, sorry, this might sound a little bit grand, but I already had an Alga cooker. And I don't know what I'd have done if I hadn't.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that? Argo. Because you don't need to have any controls or anything on it.
Yeah, I'm struggling to think what to add, really. I think in terms of, I guess, the ways I cope with it most, it's, as the others have said, just technology is key, really. The ability to touch type, use a screen reader. I use it in my job, on a day-to-day basis, on my phone, as I'm sure you're all aware, for all the number of different things, so social media, communicating with people, shopping, banking, a number of different things. Yeah, in terms of the frustrations, I don't know, I'm trying to think of these things. I guess there's, well, I think a good example of it is when, it's a bit of a general point, but when I was at uni, I had to scan all my own books, because although there was a university department that was meant to digitize it and put it in the format you wanted, they'd always give it to me in picture PDF, which the screen reader couldn't read, and it was a nightmare. And I could have spent a long time campaigning to try and change that and show them the right way to do it, but it was a lot easier just to scan all the books and give everything, make it all accessible for myself. And I found that that's something, just on a day-to-day basis, you come across situations like that where it's more effective to take things into your own hands, and especially if you've got deadlines, that's the best way to be able to meet them and get the job done quickly. So I find that you perhaps need a bit more patience, you perhaps need to be a bit more thorough with things, be a bit more organised, and I've got a head like a sieve, and I'm not very organised, and I'm not very patient. So yeah, it's I guess they're things you have to adjust to, and I guess that's a bit of a frustration. Yeah, I think that's probably my points. Josie?
Yeah, so I could probably go on about frustrations. Bus drivers, like, they never think there's anything wrong. I can give them a bus pass, and like, why have you got a bus pass? I'm like, because I'm visually impaired. And sometimes I've actually said, no, you're not. I've actually had a bus driver say, you're not. But the main thing for me is like the simplest things. Is so I get to the playground and I can't see who's there. I can't read body language. I can't see if someone's trying to say hello to me. Because a lot of the time, you look at someone first and you might smile or something. I can't see any of that. So often, a lot of my friends now will say, "Oh, hi, it's me," and they'll tell me their name. But that does help a lot. I actually took my 7-year-old to London on my own a couple of months ago, and I put all my trust in him. Went to see Ollie Murs, and he was so good, bless him, and he was reading all the signs for me on the underground, and yeah, we did it all by ourselves, so it was quite a proud moment. And yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that.
And then, so just in terms of everyone here, anyone put a hand up if they've got any questions they'd like to ask, or anything you'd like people to talk about?
Well, I'd just like to ask Josie a question. It's hard enough bringing up children when you're sighted.
Yeah.
So what are the sort of main challenges you have bringing up two small children, do you think?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say that actually. Is the biggest thing. I do remember when he was a baby, and I mean, it's a whole whirlwind when you're going through all the tests anyway. But I remember thinking, and had all these flashes in my mind, I remember thinking, I'm not going to see him, I'm not going to see him in his sports day, in assemblies. And obviously now I'm facing all of that now. So the school are really understanding, so I will always get a reserved seat at the front, which does help a lot, but it's obviously not the same. And he had a big part last year, and he had a few lines, but of course can't see him, and you've got binoculars and stuff, so that helps. And he has swimming lessons as well, which is weird. So his swimming lesson, you've got binoculars, and you looks a bit weird. But I think that is the hardest thing, and they're really good, but they don't understand. They don't understand when they're in the park and they're saying, "Look what I'm doing," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's really good. I don't know what you're doing." But no, they're really good.
Can you think of an amusing incident that's happened in relation to your sight loss in a way that maybe people have got it wrong and have done something that's actually made you smile at the ridiculousness of it all?
Can I just say one annoying thing that I get all the time is, can't you just have glasses? Why aren't you wearing glasses? Why didn't I think of that? Regularly, literally, that is about probably weekly. I must get that.
Yeah, I've got I'd imagine it's happened to a lot of people, and it's perhaps a bit of a cliche, but I work, as I said earlier, I work for the local charity for the blind and visually impaired in Cambridgeshire. I was just downstairs in work, and the postman came in, and he said, "Oh, do you know where the post has been kept? I think we're sending out a newsletter or something like that." And I went, "No, I can't find it anywhere." He went, "Are you blind or something? It's right there." And I was like, "Well, I am. I am actually." And oh God, yeah. I think those instances are quite good. Or oh yeah, I used to when my sight went, I used to work in a local shop as a Saturday boy, and I managed to tailor my job to my visual impairment. So I stopped working behind the till. I started sort of doing deliveries. I worked in a co-op, so I could read the braille to be able to fill up the shelves and things like that. When rotating, I just pull all this old stuff off, put the new stuff to the back, and put the stuff on in the way I found it. So it's up to my colleagues to rotate it. All those sorts of things. And occasionally, if I was trying to make out something on the packaging, so I could sort of make out what it was, or make out what it was compared to something else, I'd just press it to my face. And I'd always have customers coming up to me going, "Oh, are you trying to taste that or something? Does it taste nice?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm blind." And then they go, "Oh, God, I'm so sorry." And I forget to other people that that's quite a shocking thing sometimes. Lots of mischief happened at the shop. I remember I was filling up these shelves, and I was just like, I don't know, like meal deal ones with the little soft drinks, and I was just putting them all up on the shelves, pushing this trolley along to the left a little bit, and I pushed it to the left, it came back. I was like, I don't know what happened there. I pushed it again. And for the third time, this person went, "Oi, excuse me." And I was like, "Oh, God, I'm so sorry. Didn't see you there." And I was just pushing this trolley repeatedly into the back of her legs or something like that. So that's I think that's what you call good customer service. But yeah, has anyone else got any crazy blind stories?
I don't know, maybe. I don't know, I kind of get a bit of mind blank sometimes. But I guess I had a similar sort of thing with the whole, like, are you blind or something? I've forgotten what he said, but it was someone at the Tesco's self-service with my girlfriend, and, you know, just kind of, like, smiled. He realised he'd said something stupid, and kind of was very happy to see that I saw the funny side of it as well. A lot of the time, probably funny things happen when I'm drunk, so I might not necessarily remember them quite as much. Yeah, and you do get the annoying stuff as well, people accusing you of lying when you're drunk. Which again, on the one hand, you've got like those annoying people who accuse you of lying about being blind, but generally when that happens, about 20 people that you don't know jump up in your defence and kind of get the other person to bugger off. Yeah, I can't think of too many amusing anecdotes at the moment.
I've got a horror one.
Yeah?
Yeah, this isn't funny, but I was at a toddler group, and you sort of have the chairs all sort of go round in circle in the room. And I went to go over to get something behind the chairs, and there was a load of coats, what I thought were coats. I'm not actually joking, I nearly stood on a baby, and someone came rushing over, going, "There's a baby in there!" And it wasn't even a carry cot, it's one of those little silly ones that you put in a pushchair. And this tiny little baby was, thank God I didn't, but I very nearly stood on someone's baby.
Yeah, that reminds me of at a conference for Blind and Business actually, and so I was going to the toilet, just like kicking a bag out the way a little bit, just shoving it with my foot, and then I realised it was a guide dog, which felt a bit bad about. Yeah, there's just little things like that, just every now and then.
Did it bite back?
No, they're very placid, so just kind of like, yeah.
I don't think I've really got a funny story, but a few months ago and at the same point last year, I was doing some online training for people, which involves having the computer in front of you, and you're supposed to manipulate all the slides as they come up and see lots and lots of different screens showing you who the participants are and what their questions are and all those kind of things. And I was determined to do this training, and the hosts who organised the training knew my situation, but I didn't want to let on to the customers, so to speak. So I had arranged for them to give me the questions, but I was having to do an awful lot of busking in between to look as if I knew what, or sound as if I knew what was going on, when in fact I didn't have a clue. And I'd had to sort of learn the script off by heart and have very big keywords in front of me just to get me through the script in the right order for the slide. So in retrospect, there were some moments of that were quite funny, but it wasn't a humorous situation like kicking a guide dog.
I wasn't kicking it, I was just like gently. Yeah, I mean, there's as well as my girlfriend used to live with her housemate who's got a small child who's about 7 or something, and I was taking her dog for a walk and decided, I'd take him out with me as well, use his eyes a little bit. And I think he was saying to his mum, like, well, who's going to be in charge then? And, her and my girlfriend, Hannah, was like, well, Rich, obviously, like kind of, and yes. And then one of the other things that I find quite funny is how using your white cane, if you're walking along the street, a lot of the time I find it quite humorous and endearing as well, how you hear about how you're basically a learning tool for people's kids, because you can just, when you're walking down the street, you hear people say, like, "Mummy, what's that man doing," or whatever, and then there's the very awkward chat between the mum and the child about he can't see too well and stuff, and yeah, it's quite cute and funny.
I've got another one. I've thought of another. I think it's a fairly amusing story. I was just out in a pub with a friend of mine, and he's not got any sight. He's not got any light perception, and we were just heading to the loo, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I know where these are." I went to the loo, and then when I was washing my hands, I sort of leant forward at the mirror on the wall, and it was heart-shaped. And it was at that point I looked around and realised there were no urinals in here. So, yeah, that was a good. That was quite fun. As we were walking out, I was like, "Dave, do you know we just went to the ladies there." that was a good moment.
That reminds me actually, when a few years ago, I went travelling, met my sister in Cambodia, and her and her boyfriend and everyone had gone to sleep, so I was out partying still. I met some random people, but left my stick back at the hut or whatever. So someone helped me find the toilet, and then on the way back, I didn't have my stick with me, as I say, and I'd kind of forgotten about the steps. I kind of fell down the steps, and then walking back to try and find them, walked straight behind the bar, and was kind of, it's a bit empty in here, what's going on? And yeah, so someone came running over to grab me, and basically, obviously, without your stick, you just look like some drugged up idiot or something. And I've walked behind the bar quite a few times in that sort of situation, but yeah.
Has anybody got any questions for the panel?
Hi. Yeah, my daughter was affected by LHON. That's the first time we knew it existed when she was 9. She just turned 12. And I think the difficulty is she looks like she can see. And I just wonder what you guys thought about that difficulty, in addition to being severely, I keep saying severely visually impaired everywhere. All the forms I have to write on for school, she just started secondary school, and I keep getting endless forms for things, and you don't know whether to write blind or write severely visually impaired, because you feel if to say blind, that means you've got no light perception, and people don't understand that yet. For her, she's doing really well, but of course she's wanting to be fiercely independent because she's just started secondary school and she wants to be like everybody else, and we've had the battle to get her to use her cane. It's funny, I think Rich then calling it a stick, because she says it's not a stick, it's a cane, and I have to use the correct terminology or she gets cross. She's very stubborn, which I see as a good thing actually now. It has, I think, helped. But she often doesn't want to use the right cane, and I wondered if you guys always do, because, like you say, you don't look blind. And so she has to get a school bus, and she has to walk from the bus home, and like yesterday she was determined, I'm going to walk, I'm going to get home by myself, even though I was walking so many paces behind her. But she was walking without the cane, and the teachers worry about this. They're saying she should use it, so we've got a bit of a battle between the teachers saying she should. We are trying to do what's best for her. She doesn't want to. She will when she's somewhere that people don't know her. She will at the shops. But where we live, she doesn't want to use it. And do you guys use your canes all the time? And do you worry about what people think?
Yeah, sure.
I do not have one. I would not have one. End of story. Sorry. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, unless you've got something you want to say.
Yeah, so as I say, I went to the RNB College in Loughborough for a while, and I hated the idea of using a cane. Still not, 100%. It's not ideal. I prefer to be able to see it, if I'm honest. But whilst I was there, I kind of realised that there's people around me who are using a cane or stick or whatever you want to call it, that can see much more than I can. And I was kind of like, well, why aren't I using it then? Why have I got a problem and they haven't? And at the same time, a lot of the time, I don't actually need to use my cane. Like, it's kind of, I use it more for other people's sake, so that they can move out of the way and things like that. Also, I try to walk quite quickly, and people aren't going to move out of the way. You have to stop and start every 2 seconds if you don't, because people don't understand. And it's more about other people understanding, really. A lot of the time around the pub, or if I'm somewhere that's familiar, then I won't necessarily use it, but I'll always kind of take it with me as kind of like a protection sort of thing in a sense as well, because then if you do bump into someone accidentally, or you do fall over, or you do something silly, then as you say, you can't tell by your eyes and everything, and people don't understand at all, and so it's kind of like a symbol of, hi, I'm blind, or whatever. With passenger assistance on the trains and things, I think it's kind of essential, because otherwise it's not actually that fair to the staff, otherwise, because then you're just a random person standing there, you can't see them, they can't see you, they've got no reason to think that you're sight impaired or whatever, so they don't know how to help you or who to help or anything. It's quite difficult. And then if you need help in shops and things, you can just get it out, and then people know they know straight away kind of what's going on and stuff. And as I say, it's not the best, it's not ideal, but it's a difficult sort of thing. And I know that everyone with LHON has different ideas on it. I just find it a very useful tool, and it's kind of quite helpful. One of the main things that it helps me with, particularly that I would otherwise struggle with, is steps and things, going up and down them a lot quicker, but otherwise I don't necessarily need it. It's more for other people and for if I need help for any sort of situation.
Oh yeah. I don't actually have one. I've got a symbol cane, which no one really knows what it is, but I'm still waiting to accept it too, 7 years later. But I've always had a pushchair, so obviously my son was a baby, I then went on to have another child, and she's literally just outgrown it, so for me that was like a barrier. I'd always have a pushchair. So yeah, I'm on the waiting list to have the training, but I suppose it is a bit of a symbol thing, like you're saying. Like, no one realises when you say, or it depends how you say it as well. If you say, oh, I don't see very well, people never understand, so sometimes you do have to say I'm visually impaired and use the correct terminology, because people just don't get it. Yeah.
So for me, I pretty much as soon as I could, I started using the cane. I remember there was a period of time after my slight deterioration stabilised and I got the diagnosis. Between that and getting training using the cane and sort of teaching how to sort of work out routes, things like that, where I didn't have a cane and I knew the area that I lived in very well. I went out on the bus and went to go and walk to a local bank where I knew I didn't need to cross any major roads. I could just stay on the same side of the road and I wouldn't have to do anything too difficult. And I was just walking around, it was this time of year, so it was overcast, and I was walking around with little sort of baby steps, not walking very quickly at all, and got to a point where I just lost where I was, lost the pavement, and thought, oh, I need to ring someone up now and get them to pick me up. And I knew exactly where I was, thankfully, but I think that just shows that I was restless at the time and showed me that I needed some sort of mobility aid. And yeah, I started using the cane, and it just helps me walk quickly, confidently, and is a symbol for other people so they know that I'm visually impaired. I think, I don't know, I can't really talk, obviously I can't talk from first-hand experience about what it's like being a child and having a visual impairment, but I have worked with visually impaired children, and it's quite common that visually impaired children find it difficult when using the cane, because it's something that points them out as different from everyone else, or the majority of their peers. What has helped some of the children we work with is actually meeting other visually impaired people. You can see that they eventually, after some period of time sort of talking with each other, they talk about maybe similar things that they find frustrating or similar issues that they might have. They might end up eventually talking about canes. I was listening to a conversation the other day where two young girls, about 9, 10, were talking about the colour of cane that they were using. And when I remember when one of them first joined that group, they didn't want to go near their cane. It was really really encouraging to see that. There's also a charity that I volunteer for called VICTA. It's the acronym VICTA, and they have family weekends where the children meet up, and these interactions happen all the time. It's just a fun outdoor centre they might go to for a family weekend or something along those lines. And I'd say it seems though it seems like quite a positive thing for those children to have at that age, to try and make them feel like, well, they're not alone, that there is a community out there, people who are the same age as them and who understand some of the things that they're going through. I mean, going back to myself, I think Chad made a good point in terms of when you're familiar with a place. I know you said when she's walking around her local neighbourhood, she doesn't use the cane often. When you're familiar with where you live, you can get by without really using proper cane skills. I might be walking along with it, not really using it properly around near where I live, just listening out for the traffic, knowing where all the curbs are and all these sorts of things. And but when I'm going around an unfamiliar place or a busy place, or say, I don't know, even if I know it well, like the city centre of Cambridge, if it's really busy, I'll always be using my cane properly and walking forwards, because then if I walk into people, it's their problem. They didn't see me coming. So yeah, yeah, and that's I'd say that's the way I see it. I hope I hope that helps.
Can I say something? This is Christer. Well, I think it's a mistake to put the question forward to say if you have LHON, you should use a cane, because people with LHON have so many different visual capacities. You know, you have some people with LHON who drive cars in the Netherlands, because then you can drive a car with a telescope. That's not funny, that's Netherlands. You can do that also now in 44 out of 50 states in the United States. If you have 0.16 and use a telescope of 4 times, you get 0.5, and then you can drive. And also, some people with LHON cannot use a CCTV to read letters. And some people can use 3 or 4 times in spectacles and read. And if you ask them should they wear a cane or not? My answer to parents like you, I would say, if the cane is a problem, don't use it. If it's a solution, use it. It depends on if you like, if you are prepared emotionally, if you are a person with a visual impairment, you can use it and you accept that. But if you are regarded as a visually impaired person, that's another kind of attitude.
I think as well, one of the as you say, it's a very personal sort of thing, and so I think it is very different depending on each situation of things. But I think one of the reasons why I use a cane, and I think one of the reasons why Warren uses a cane as well, is because it's been normalised around us quite a bit as well. Like playing goalball and things, you hang around with other people who are visually impaired as well. There's kind of, I think I can see how from someone, I lost my eyesight at 24, so I was out of school and things like that. But if you're at school age and things, then I can kind of see how no one else around you is using that, no one else around you is doing that sort of thing. Whereas if you put someone in a situation where people are, then it can make it a lot easier to kind of see, like these people don't have a problem with it, why should I? And that's how I started using my cane as well, because I was kind of, well, why have these guys not got a problem? Right? At the same time as well, I kind of like, in a sense, because you're sort of in your own little bubble and, you know, kind of just ignoring the world around you. There's been times as well where, as I say, I kind of sometimes don't feel that it's necessarily fair on the public for me not to use the cane sometimes. I remember when I was in Loughborough at the RNLB College, me and my mate went to the pub. I tried to go to the toilet, but I left my cane behind, so I just went and asked some random people, excuse me, where's the toilet? They pointed, so I said, sorry, I can't see, where is it? They pointed again, I was like, can you just show me? They basically didn't, so I kind of like struggled to try and find it, came back, told my mate about how I was a bit upset and annoyed about it, and he basically said, why didn't you bring a cane with you? Like, kind of, that, I mean, it just resolves the problem straight away and can make things a lot easier in some situations as well. Sorry, did you?
Okay. I was just going to say, some people might have thought that my earlier response was a little bit sharp, but I think that what Krista has just said reflects what I was going to say in any case. The basic issue here is about acceptance, one's own acceptance. Perhaps I haven't yet got to the stage of acceptance.
I think we're going to have to...
Can I just say one thing really quickly? To the lady who asked about her child, rightly or wrongly, I have a guide dog, so I don't often use my cane. But when I do use my cane, I don't like to, it might come down to acceptance, but I don't like to tap on the floor. My cane trainer would shoot me for not doing it. But how I hold the cane is just in front of me. It's very well because it doesn't detect stuff. But I do feel it doesn't actually stand out. Maybe like I say, it's difficult to explain, like just walk the cane, just not moving, just directly in front of me. It makes me feel like I'm not sticking out as much. Again, sometimes with a child, it might just be that moving along does make you seem more like you're standing out. So maybe there's a different way of holding the cane. It may not be the right way, it may be a way of kind of finding a compromise, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
No worries.
We've probably got time for one more question. Has anybody got anything they'd like to ask the panel?
I've got a sneaky couple of questions, really, but I'll try and be quick. I guess it's a relatively recent positive change, I think, that people are recognising the social model of disability and that actually it's the world that needs to change and not you. But sadly, I think sometimes there's still some responsibility on you to push that forward. So have you got any tips on how to make sure that workplaces and services and organisations are accessible and are changing? And also, my other question is, have you got any memorable turning points or positive stories? I know there are lots of frustrations, and Richard, I know you've talked about trying to get assisted shopping in Sainsbury's and people not knowing what a spring onion is, and I know there must be lots of frustrations, but are there, have you got any memorable moments or positive stories?
Can I just have a positive story, just because we could talk about work, sorry to interrupt, but in the job that I'm currently working at the moment, I took a little bit of time out with the boys school, and I went for an interview with the company I'm at, and I turned up on my 6 before I had my guide done, and it'd been through an agency. I kind of sat through this interview so no, the site's got absolutely no importance to this whatsoever. It was just really refreshing to kind of see that, you know, they didn't care about that at all. They just said, no, we'll give you the job based on whether we think you can do it, and we'll work out whether you can after we've given you the job. And it was just really refreshing to see a company like that. So I thought that was a positive story that we can work.
Excellent. Trying to think. I think I don't know. Addressing the the social model of disability. That's I don't know. I think I don't want to sound like I'm being a bit of a cop out here, but I think it's a very difficult thing to change as an individual. You can come across as positive and confidently as you can. Allow people to ask questions about your visual impairment. Hopefully it won't be the first thing that someone brings up to you on a bus, which it quite often is. There's small talk. All these sorts of things. I think the main ways that those sorts of things can be tackled are perhaps more on a societal level. So just sort of the way that visually impaired people are portrayed, maybe in the media, on TV and films, all these sorts of things. That's what I feel might be the best way of tackling, of trying to improve the way society perceives disabled people, to try and tackle things like disability, employment gaps, etc. If I was to pick one memorable moment, it's just I don't know, perhaps a bit of a funny story. It goes back to the amusing stories question, but about a year ago, I went to go punting with a group of friends, not just blind people, but there were a couple of other blind people coming along. There was about 8 of us. A few people pulled out, which left me with about the best level of sight out of the lot of us. And yeah, there was me and two of us didn't have any light perception. There was myself, and then there was another guy who had got very advanced RP, so a very narrow field of vision in the middle of his sight. And we went punting up the River Cam, crashed into a few punts on the way, made a real nuisance of ourselves. I leant in and was like, "What?" to the river. I was like, "What's that?" And then this duck bit my finger. I was like, "What are you doing?" I didn't say that. I said the much worse language and through whatever it was I was in the river. On the way back, we were punting back along the river, and this person went, "Oi, you're punting down the wrong side of the river." And I turned to him and went, "Oh, but we're blind. We don't know. Were there any signs?" And he said, he clearly didn't believe us. He's like, "Yeah, whatever, mate. Come on." No, seriously, we are. There was a punt of my friend basically goes to Darwin College and Cambridge University, and that's how we were able to get access to a punt, because I'm not sure people would have really given us access to a punt otherwise. And yeah, I met one of his friends the other day who works for one of the punt companies in Cambridge, and he said, "It's you guys. You're the guys who were the blind punters, the ones going down the river." And I was like, "Yeah." Yeah, so no, I think anything is really possible. If we were able to punt up and down this congested river, I think anything's possible. So yeah, passing on to you. Chad?
Yeah. It did take me a while to figure out what punting was. But
sorry, yeah. It's basically what they do in Venice. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess sorry about the social dynamic of sight loss and blindness. There's a few things that I've done to try and help raise awareness and things, because I think one of the most important things is about awareness and that. So I've done a couple of small videos and things with local charity and tried to, if the papers have spoken to me a couple of times, the local papers and stuff about small stories and things. And so I've tried to raise awareness in that sort of sense. So sometimes people literally stop me in the street and kind of chat about it, and I'm more than happy to do that because I'd quite like to give like a positive attitude towards it and kind of help people figure it out. I think that sight loss and disability in general should be spoken about more in schools and things, and it isn't. But yeah, and then whenever people ask for help as well, no, sorry, not ask for help, ask me if I want any help or whatever, just crossing the road and things like that, I tend to find that it's very important for me not to turn around and tell them to bugger off, because a lot of people do that, and I think that restricts people from asking for help and things as well, and it's something that I think is quite important for people to do. There's one of the other things is that there's, as I say, like I try and do sport and things. I play quite a few sports and things, and I kind of do that for fun and everything, obviously, but also I quite like to prove things to other people, mainly prove things to myself as well, though. And yeah, so I guess in a positive sense as well, it has kind of changed my life for the better in a lot of ways. It is very depressing and does raise a lot of anxiety in a lot of situations, but I went back to university and completed my degree. I've done some incredible things since that I probably wouldn't have done because I've just been too lazy without the motivation and kick up the bum to do these things, which kind of sight loss has given me, which I guess is where a lot of the positive sort of stuff comes from. And yeah, I'd probably still just be working in a restaurant now if I didn't lose my eyesight, really, which I don't want to do. But
On perhaps a more superficial level, but I think it raises some other questions as well. What immediately came to mind was a friend of mine who has had some really, really significant health problems in the past few years, and I'm fairly frequently on the phone to her because I can't actually get to go and see her all that often. But when I say, that I'm coming down to London or I've been into Manchester, she is totally amazed. And my response is, well, I didn't drive the train. It's the sort of assumption that she and I suspect quite a lot of people have, that, to get to Manchester or London or wherever is quite impossible if I'm not driving a car. Well, I can sit on a train quite well. So I think there's perhaps quite a lot of issues around that sort of thing.
Do you want to say anything, Josie?
I'll just really quickly then. Well, me and Warren did one as well, a couple of years before me, but did a skydive for campsite for the charity. Just little things to raise awareness. And tiny little thing. My son, a couple of years ago, so sweet, he was doing some sort of homework and he wrote about, and I can't remember what they were doing, but he wrote, "My mummy is brave, she's got poorly eyes," and it's really sweet. So I thought I'd end it on that one.
That was a lovely one to end it on, thank you. So Lydia's going to come up and just quickly say something for a couple of minutes, and then we'll just have a 10-minute break to have some teas, coffees, refreshments or whatever. But yeah, just before Lydia comes up, just say a huge thank you to Carol, Rich, Warren and Josie, because to come up here and be honest about your experiences, your thoughts, express your emotions and everything you've been through is a really big deal and really helpful and insightful for all of us. So thank you, everyone.
Well, hello everyone. Can I just say thank you to the panels as well. You're a really hard act to follow, so here goes. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lydia Harper. I'm a PhD researcher at Cardiff University, and I have been undertaking a qualitative research study, and I've been asking my participants to tell me about their experience of being diagnosed with Labour's, the challenges they faced following their diagnosis, how they've overcome those challenges, and to what extent they've actually come to terms with their condition. I'm currently in the process of writing up my PhD. I have interviewed 39 participants, 15 affected males, 8 affected females, 6 mothers, 2 siblings, 7 healthcare professionals, which have included neuro-ophthalmologists, an eye clinic liaison officer, a representative of the pharmaceutical industry, and representatives from sight loss charities. What became apparent during the interviews was the problems that my participants had experienced in actually being diagnosed with a condition. And it seems that it's not a straightforward process. Now, whilst years ago you would have expected it to have been difficult and that a condition that was not recognised, but it would seem that there are still problems in the diagnosis. And certainly one of my participants was diagnosed 18 months ago. So you may be surprised that they still found that they were misdiagnosed. The majority of the participants who were misdiagnosed were told they had optic neuritis. Sent away from the clinic, told to come back in 6 weeks if the condition hadn't cleared up. Now, of course, the problem with this is that there are new treatments coming online, and the difficulty for them is that if this condition isn't spotted quickly, then the effectiveness of any new treatment options may impact on the availability for them and the effectiveness. So that's been a big issue, and I'm sure Patrick will talk later about these new treatments and to what extent he feels that not being diagnosed will impact on the effectiveness. So I'd like to take this opportunity, firstly, to thank all of the individuals in the audience who participated in my research. I'm very grateful to you all because, of course, without you, I wouldn't have been able to undertake the research. I'm going to be around for the rest of the day, so if anybody would like to ask me about my research, any questions, certainly some of the comments that have been made by the panel, and indeed the questions from the audience, mirror some of the findings in my data, which I found quite interesting. And I think that there's a lot more work from a qualitative perspective that can be done with this condition. James, of course, has published an article, which many of you may have read, but that's the only qualitative article that I've been able to find. So well done, James, for bringing that to public attention. I'm currently in the process of publishing articles myself from the PhD. I have been disseminating some of my research findings. I was speaking at the British Sociological Association MedSoc conference last week in York. Earlier in the year, I spoke at a mitochondrial symposium in London, and I've presented at Patient Days in Cardiff with Professor Marcella Vitruba. So I hope that my research will get out there and that will also help my participants to make sure that this condition isn't overlooked, because certainly from what I've seen at the moment, it does seem to be overlooked from a qualitative perspective. I know there's a lot of scientific research, but not qualitative. So I'm hoping that the work that I have undertaken may help. So I don't know whether anybody wants to ask me any questions now or save it for later.
Yeah, we maybe take a break now for 10 minutes and then we grab if you have any questions. Or
There's no one mentioned driving.
That's okay?
No, it's true actually.
I mean, I drive.
Yeah, I
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, I should have mentioned
the
that.
station of driving.
I should have mentioned that. Did you drive?